Hey YouTube, I'm Blaze, and today's video is an ultimate guide on how to killstreak with Lightsaber heroes. I will be separating this video up into 5 separate points, which are of course in no particular order. This isn't to say that there aren't any other points, I'm sure there are plenty more. It's just these are what I thought are the most important points to remember, and by employing them I should think that your gameplay will improve. Just to let you know, in the next couple of weeks I will not be able to live stream as I'm in a different setup right now, but do feel free to let me know when the best times for me to stream are for you, so that when I do start streaming it will always be at the best time. Moving on to the first point of the video, which is to time your attacks, or in other words, take advantage of your enemy's weaknesses, of which, other than the obvious of attacking low health enemies, is to make sure to attack enemies who have just used crucial abilities, and to attack enemies when their stamina is low, and that applies to obviously enemy heroes. And this is especially important in Galactic Assault when the enemy team is stronger than you, and even more so when the enemy team has you locked up in an objective where it's very helpful for your team, and especially for increasing your kill streak, to push through the enemy team, at which point you need to take out their heroes, because those are the guys who are going to cause your team the most problems, and you need to know when to take on their heroes without losing too much health yourself and losing your kill streak altogether. And the best way to do this is to wait for them to use crucial abilities and or use up all their stamina. And for the stamina first, if you see an enemy hero blocking in front of the rest of your team, make sure to then follow up with an attack immediately afterwards, because they'll be low on stamina, and so they won't be able to attack or block nearly as much, making it really easy pickings for you. Similarly, if you see, let's say, Lando just quickly zap his disabler, then you quickly want to attack Lando, because that means he hasn't got a stun, and that means you're much more likely to prevail against him, because he's going to have that on cooldown and not be able to stun you mid-fight, which is the main way Lando is going to kill you. And obviously this applies to all the main abilities which have really detrimental effects to you, so like Vader's choke, like Anakin's passionate strike, or like Han's detonate charge. And of course this can be combined with baiting out your opponents into either using their abilities or blocking or slashing. So for example, if you're Anakin quickly popping a heroic might in front of a Vader and holding that in for a while, and he's going to be forced to block, otherwise as soon as he doesn't you're just going to sweep him away, and if your team's there, what they can do is they can shoot at him, his stamina will drain, and then as soon as you release that, there's going to be a brief window where Vader's going to either have to run away or take the full force of your attacks against the low stamina, which means you've basically nailed a few hits on Vader, which is a lot. And that's just one example of many ways to bait out opponents' abilities. One of my favourites for stun abilities is peeking in and out of a corner, pretending you're going to attack, but then immediately dashing back, so that your opponents might use their stun abilities, at which point you can peek back through the corner after the stun hasn't hit you or hit you around a corner, and then you can take advantage of the fact that they no longer have their stun. Of course, all that I've mentioned, which involves using your teammates as backup, needs to be taken with a grain of salt, because not always will your teammates actually do the correct thing or the predictive thing even. So just make sure that if you're doing anything, you're in the safe position, so that if your teammates don't back you up, then you can get out of there without taking too much damage. The second point is about pacing your attack, so this involves knowing how many swings it takes to kill your enemy. So for example, if you coming up on, let's say, an assault, and you know it takes you only one swing to kill them, then only take one swing, because if you start overswinging, then you're exposed to the enemies by a multiple of time. So taking 2 swings when you could take 1 doubles the amount of damage you'll take under enemy fire. And so this involves just really slashing and then immediately dashing, because during your slash it's actually quite a lengthy animation where you're just stuck without any defense, so enemies will probably start firing at you pretty quickly, so that dash will throw off the aim and allow you to escape. When you're running away, I like to dash and then make a small jump and then dash again, but that's not really involved in this point. Also take note that if your opponent's using low rate of fire but high damage weapons such as the Vanguard, you want to block one shot then slash, and if they're using high fire rate weapons which do a lot of damage, then you want to dash behind the enemies before slashing at them, so you won't be, shot in the face whilst you're slashing. Of course, this wouldn't be a complete guide without me mentioning the next 2 points, which, although obvious to some, are actually really crucial in, getting long kill streaks. And this tip, the first of 2, is to equip the right star cards. Namely, you want to equip health star cards. These will help your survivability so much, which means you'll be getting longer kill streaks all the time. But then also, you want to take star cards which increase the damage of your abilities, which allow you to one-shot certain people. So if a star card allows you to one-shot people with a certain ability, then you want to take that card. Most importantly, if it's strike, so for example Anakin or Grievous's card on their strike damage allow them to one-shot all the regular classes apart from heavy at a certain level, so making sure to get that card then upgrade it to a certain level allows you to just take out those people, which minimizes the amount of time you're under enemy fire because it reduces the amount of swings it takes to kill certain enemies. And for the second, which is again kind of obvious, it's to PTFO, play the objective. And I know a lot of people will tell you this just because, hey, we like people to play the objective kind of thing. No, but seriously, playing the objective is where all the enemies are, but most importantly, it's where you can flank around to get a lot of kills just free without anyone shooting at you. And this is where, once you've got a little bit of map knowledge, you can really use the back of the objectives to get a lot of kills, but more importantly, help your team push up a lot, which increases the amount of time you're on the battlefront, which means longer kill streaks. The final tip is going to be on maximizing survivability, and the most important thing here is to always make sure you know where your enemies are so that you don't end up chasing a weakened enemy and then running into the entire enemy team, who then proceed to melt you in 3.2 seconds. And you'd be surprised the number of times this does happen is heroes overextend all the time and they just get shot down. 9 times out of the 10, this is the way you're going to die in Galactic Assault. So the best way to solve this issue is always being aware of where your enemies are, and particularly enemy heroes and enemy tanks, especially if you're on the light side, because those AT-ATs and those AT-SDs deal a lot of damage, and knowing where they are so that you can attack areas where they aren't is a really good way of not losing all your health. By always being aware of where your enemies are and who they are, so you know if there's a stun hero nearby so you can avoid them or at least not take them on head on, then you actually can approach enemies from behind. You can know when to disengage when you're going to be swamped, because large groups of enemies are a real threat to lightsaber heroes, especially in open areas and especially if you don't attack them from behind. So getting into those flanks is really important, and obviously you need to know where your enemies are in order to flank them in the first place. Also, make sure never to swing or execute an ability which has a somewhat lengthy animation in front of a group of enemies, unless of course you've got some damage reduction or other kind of defense around you, because you will take lots of damage. Even if you do it in the middle of a group of enemies, they will turn really quickly and start shooting you, so that's really important as well for just keeping alive. And lastly, if your team is struggling, remember that keeping enemy heroes, especially if they're newbie, alive but on very low health is a lot better than killing them and potentially letting a better player get the hero on the enemy team. Okay, I think that's going to wrap up that video. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more content like this, feel free to leave a comment. Bye.